I should say a couple of minutes or. Welcome, welcome. So happy you're here with us. Just going to wait another minute. So I know people are still coming in. Okay. All right, we are going to get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our second annual New Year Wellness Series, packed with meaningful guidance on spiritual, relational, emotional, nutritional, physical, and mental wellness. I'm Robin Rubin, founder of the Robin Rubin Center for Happiness and Life Enhancement. This center is housed in the Sandler School of Social Work within the College of Social Work and Criminal Justice at FAU. We offer weekly online meditation sessions, bi-monthly in-person yoga classes, and monthly wellness workshops. All of our offerings are free of charge and open to everyone, students, faculty, staff, friends, and family. The Robin Rubin Center for Happiness and Life Enhancement is pleased to co-sponsor this series with our friends at the Marcus Institute of Integrative Health at FAU Medicine. Integrative Health is a holistic, patient-focused approach to healthcare and wellness. At the Marcus Institute, their physicians treat the whole person by examining everything that makes up a patient's health, including factors that can lead to disease, affect nutrition, exercise, and stress. Ultimately, patients and physicians are partners in healing and wellness. We're posting links in the chat now to invite you to learn more about the Robin Rubin Center and the Marcus Institute, and make plans to join us again in the near future. It is my honor to introduce today's speaker. Christy Cagliani is a registered licensed dietitian, nutritionist, a certified eating disorder registered dietitian and supervisor, and certified intuitive eating counselor who has specialized in disordered eating and eating disorders since 1995, beginning with a nationally whoa, I just lost my notes. 1 second. Sorry about that. It just went bye-bye. That's so interesting. What happened? Sorry about that, people. I just lost my notes. That's weird. Where? I just lost my notes. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Specialized in disordered eating and eating disorders since 1995, beginning with a nationally renowned treatment center before founding her private practice, Nourishing Success, in 2013. She co-founded Boca Raton-based Therapeutic Oasis. Her mission has been to work with individuals and families on their journey towards a balanced and fulfilling life with food, and to challenge the intense cultural and societal pressures around eating and our bodies. Her mindfulness-based, non-diet approach allows clients to identify, understand, and move beyond their eating struggles as they reconnect with their internal signals of hunger and satiety. What is that word, Christy?
Satiety.
Satiety, thank you. She is passionate about teaching clients to eat intuitively and move joyfully. As a nutrition therapist, Christy Cagliani speaks regularly to groups of children and adults and counsels individuals in such areas as disordered eating, eating disorders, preventative nutrition, women's health, and wellness. Please enjoy this educational and engaging presentation. Take it away, Christy.
All right, so if we can deal with the technology piece, everything else will be great. So fingers crossed. Okay. All right, so I am really excited to be here today. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm honored to be a part of this really amazing series. So Yes, I'm a dietitian, so I'm trained in food, but my philosophy really is that food is a whole lot more than nutrition. And so the topic today on food and mood is really a great testament to that. So love these little quotes to kind of set the stage, but laughter's brightest in the place where food is. I very much believe that. And a party without cake is just a meeting. So that's a little glimpse at my philosophy. A couple things we're going to just get to today, so you sort of have an idea of what the framework is. We're going to talk about brain and what it thinks about food, food's function, from macro to micronutrients, neurotransmitters, how stress and food intersect, and then what's the real deal? Like, how do we put this into our life? So, and if you guys have questions, please jot them down, put them in the chat. I'm happy to get to them at the end because I might be talking a little quickly to make sure we get everything in today. So our brain is pretty amazing, and it utilizes 20 to 40% of the nutrients and the energy that we eat. So of all our organs, our brain uses the most juice. So nutrition provides not only the structure, but the fuel, the building blocks to communication, and the protection. So it's a little important. And we're going to do a lot of myth busting today. So a lot of this, some of these myths are things that you might just really, you might know are kind of myths, but not really understand why, or you might actually not even realize they're myths because some of them are really burned into our brain actually as truth. So we're going to do a little bit of dispelling today. So myth number one is that low-fat diets are great for our brain. Not true. So dietary fats, one of the main macronutrients, are pretty crucial to our brain. So our brain is made of fat. That last slide, that was made from fat. That is what makes up our brain. So it's pretty important that we have fat in our diet. And that starts, as babies are being made. So what that also means is that deficiencies, nutritional deficiencies, can cause our brain to shrink. We can actually lose brain mass when we are deficient in our food, and particularly deficient of dietary fat. So essential fatty acids, essential when it comes to thinking in terms of food, essential means it's something that we can't get from within our body. It's something we need food for. So essential fatty acids are the most critical molecules that determine our brain's performance. So brain can be functioning, but not optimally if we're not eating enough fat. So dietary fats, from a functional standpoint, help the development and the function of neurotransmitters. We'll talk about that a little bit later. They help fight inflammation, which is a buzzword we hear a lot about. Inflammation is a big part of, we're understanding, leads to a lot of different disease states. And enough DHA and EPA, those are two types of omega-3s. Enough of those omega-3s actually will help us fight depression. It's really important for memory and recall. I need more and more of that all of the time. Attention, and cognitive and metabolic regulation. So food sources, fatty fish, we think of salmon, but there's a lot of other fish that actually have really high fat content and are really good for our brain. Avocado, nuts, olives. Can you guys see? Can you see my full screen? Okay, no, okay. Can you see it now? I don't know. I never know which, okay. I don't know, okay. I'm gonna move it down there. Oh shoot, okay. So myth number 2, carbs are evil. So boy, poor carbs, they get a really bad rap all the time. And just when they start to, be forgiven, then another diet comes around. But carbs are not evil. So let me tell you why. Carbs are the only fuel that they are the only thing our brain runs off. Our brain requires carbohydrate in order to work, period. And carbs, complex carbs, break down into sugar. So our brain recognizes sugar as the source of fuel. It can't take bran, high fiber, and feed the brain. It needs sugar. It doesn't mean we have to eat just sugar. It means that carbohydrates break into that, and that gives us the fuel. So thinking, memory, learning, concentration require carbs. Low carb diets actually will enhance depression, anxiety, irritability, frustration, anger, mood swings. So if you have someone or you are someone in your life who it has a propensity, who has a genetic predisposition for depression or anxiety, a low carb diet actually could be the thing that kicks it into gear. And it's a huge vulnerability to other mental health predispositions. So we need enough carbohydrates. And just as an example, if you were to just conceive how much carbohydrate is needed to run the brain alone, it would be about 110 to 145 grams a day. That equals, in terms of just bread, 7 to 10 slices of bread a day, or 2.5 to 3.5 cups of rice. Now, we don't eat just one source of carbohydrate, but it helps you see that if we're not getting enough carbs, our brain's having to go to, adrenaline and other sources of energy that aren't real energy. So carbohydrate sources, grains, rice, quinoa, potatoes, oats, millet, bread. I mean, it's a huge list. Fruit, vegetables, yes, vegetables are a carbohydrate. However, we can't get enough carbohydrate in our body and to feed our brain from just vegetables. So we need grains, we need fruit, we need vegetables. And newsflash, not all carbs have to be high fiber whole grain. Our body knows what to do with white rice and white bread too. This is a little sign I have in my office. I'm sorry for the things I said when I was hungry. So hangry, hungry, that is a real thing. And notice how you feel also if you're really, really angry, irritated because you're hungry and you eat a piece of bread, how you instantly begin to feel like a human being again. Pretty awesome. And if you feel that way and you eat a piece of bacon, you are actually not going to feel any better. Tastes great, it's awesome, but it's not going to feed your brain. So myth number 3, protein's main function is muscle development. No. Protein, which is made of amino acids, which we learned back in grade school science somewhere, is that amino acids are the building blocks of life. Well, what does that mean? It means they make the hormones and enzymes that run all of our body processes. So if we don't have enough protein, aka amino acids, we chemically can't start. Amino acids also make the neurotransmitters, those messengers. And food, we need protein from food sources, not just a single amino acid. So there are about 8 essential amino acids. What that means is we need, again, all of those from food, and we do best when they're packaged together. So their most bioavailable source comes from an animal protein. However, we can get enough protein from non-animal sources. That's obviously, people are vegetarian and vegan and function just fine in this life. And so it's possible to get enough protein, but it needs to be done mindfully. They need to make sure they're getting enough of those amino acids so they're covering all of their essential needs. Myth number 4, vitamins and minerals give me energy. I can take a supplement to replace the food I'm missing. So no, vitamins and minerals actually don't give us fuel. Fuel only comes from carb, protein, and fat. Those are macronutrients. You've heard macros. Macros are amazing. We just don't need to count them. Vitamins and minerals are part of the micronutrient family. And I think of them as sort of the spark plugs. So they can help us unlock the energy we get from food. So it's great, but they don't give us energy. So we can't take a supplement and replace food. There can be a role for supplementation, however. So, sorry. Okay, so some of the main vitamin and mineral links to moods. are, I mean, so many more than listed here, but these are some of the top 5. So the top 2 vitamin areas would be some of the B vitamins and vitamin D. So especially B12, B6, and folate. That's critical for a healthy nervous system. So the whole system actually has to have enough B vitamins in order to function well. And B vitamins help us unlock the energy from food. So if you're eating enough food, but we're deficient in B vitamins, we can't get the energy into our system and our nervous system. So animal protein, dairy, seeds. If someone is a vegetarian, this is an area where supplementation is usually critical. Vitamin D, really important for mood regulation. And we're finding a lot of link to depression when people have a deficiency in vitamin D. Sunlight is an amazing source, but even in Florida, so many people, so many of my clients have a deficiency in vitamin D, or they're on the low end of normal. So getting some sunlight without actual, a little 15 minutes without some sunscreen is great. And fatty fish and fortified dairy is a good source, or a supplement. This is a very easy thing to supplement. And it is if one of the few supplements that I recommend on a fairly regular basis is vitamin D. Calcium, one of the kind of I would call top 3 minerals for our mood regulation, because it helps the neuron activity. Deficiency here is linked to depression, anxiety, insomnia. Also, a lot of people who have bad PMS benefit from calcium increase. And dairy fortified, like orange juice, things like that, have a great source of calcium. And again, supplementation if someone is really not getting in those food sources. Iron has a link to anxiety, can really mess up our sleep when we're deficient. And there is some link to depression here also. Animal sources of protein are our best highly available source of iron. But again, we can get it from vegetables. It's just that we need to have some vitamin C to absorb it. Iron is not something I regularly recommend supplementation for unless the physician is, unless there's really like blood work that shows it's important, because too much can be not great for our heart. Zinc activates our nervous system. It helps neurotransmitters, hormones, enzymes, and deficiencies here, again, related to anxiety and depression. We're talking a lot about that, but it's very relative to that. And there is a pretty strong link with eating disorders. So a lot of times when people have an eating disorder, they are required to take some additional zinc in addition to the food. Again, animal protein, beans, dairy, seafood, and whole grain cereal. All right, so neurotransmitters. All right, so neurotransmitters are our body's chemical messengers. So that's the signaling between neurons. It happens by neurotransmitters. And you've probably heard of these quite often. These are sort of our main ones. There are other ones that exist, but dopamine and norepinephrine, it helps us stay alert. It is an awake type of neurotransmitter. It kind of keeps us up and active. So meat, fish, beans, nuts, seeds, and cheese. Serotonin, that's one we probably hear more than anything. And that's the calming one. It makes us feel good, helps us like settle in. We can tolerate pain better when when we have an adequate amount of serotonin. It reduces our cravings for carbs. It's often the reason that we have a craving for carb when we're needing more serotonin. And so carbs will increase that sense of well-being. So when we're depressed, we are not craving lettuce. We are craving a carbohydrate typically, and that has value. So it's important not to judge it and criticize it, but to actually honor it. Acetylcholine is another neurotransmitter that's really related to memory and learning. So eggs, liver, wheat germ, brewer's yeast, fish, soy, corn, and peanuts are some pretty common ones. So, oopsie. So gut health is something that we're hearing so much more of, and the research is really new and exciting and just evolving all of the time. And What we're now referring to our gut as is the second brain. It actually has its own nervous system. So if you've ever had butterflies, like I did before I got on today, that was my nervous system showing up in my tummy. And it's so helpful to understand that that's normal, number one. And at least 60% of people who have anxiety or depression also have IBS. So, when people come in to see me because they have irritable bowel syndrome, I'm not going to give them this magical way of eating. We're going to talk about, yeah, we're going to talk about their food. We're also going to talk about what else is going on in their life and what's happening emotionally and situationally, because that's showing up here, not just here. So our gut health, our environment in our gut is actually influenced by a lot of factors, including early childhood trauma, stress, food variety, medication, illness. I mean, this everything goes through here, right? So it takes a hit in lots of different ways. Nearly 80% of our serotonin, which remember is that like calming, happy, nice, feel good hormone, is made in our gut. So if our gut's not so happy, our serotonin is not going to be happening at an optimal level. So the mind is the key to a healthy gut. A healthy microbiome is the key to a balanced mind. And what are these words? Microbiome, what is that? It's basically the world in here. It's the environment in our gut. It's the bacteria, the good bacteria, all these other microorganisms, which there's a lot in there. And it helps create that environment. So probiotics, again, something you're hearing a lot in recent years, are the foods that contain bacteria that help our gut. So they're the stuff that builds more bacteria in there. We take a supplement. Some supplements can be helpful. More often than not, they're really not going to do much. But food sources are amazing ways to boost your bacteria. So kefir, yogurt, sauerkraut, kombucha, kimchi, which one day maybe I will learn to like, fermented foods, pickled vegetables, and then prebiotics. Think of prebiotics as the food for the probiotic, which is the food for your gut. So fiber and omega-3s give us the food to kind of help those probiotics flourish. Myth number 5. So if we're going to improve our moods, we should control our food, right? We should actually cut some stuff out. We should get rid of the bad foods, right? No. So research really shows over and over that the more we try to over control anything really usually blows up on us. But the focus on avoidance is really counterproductive. So if we are restricting our food in an attempt, again, to try to feel better, I'm going to eat healthier this year, so I'm going to cut out certain foods. At first, that kind of feels good. It gives us a little, I'm doing something good, and it does feel sort of good to our brain. And then it doesn't. It increases our stress hormones, and our whole system becomes, it reacts to it. We'll talk more about that in the next slide. Restriction actually can deplete the production of neurotransmitters. Poor quality diet will increase depression risk, vitamin mineral deficiencies, as I already said, and then low fatty acid intake increases the risk of depression. So when we focus on inclusion, this is something we can do. This is an active participant in our daily life. So focusing on what we can do actually helps create more balance than avoiding. So meals and snacks every 3 to 4 hours-ish on a regular basis, trying to develop a rhythm, a reliable eating pattern. So our body knows what to expect. It's also good for our gut, by the way. When we're eating erratically, our gut's confused and it doesn't know if we're coming or going and when we're going to feed it. So giving that regular eating consistency really helps our gut settle down. Eat at least 3 food groups at all meals. So that means we're introducing more variety and nutrient diversity, variety of foods throughout the day and from day to day. So trying not to eat the same breakfast every single day, the exact same lunch every single day, trying to have some some variation. And that you might have your favorites, that's fine, but try to, add some different fruits here and there and add variety where you can. Color is another great way to include, because we also know, if you think, for example, you could close your eyes if you want, but imagine a plate in front of you. And on that plate is a piece of broiled chicken breast, cauliflower, and mashed potatoes, all of which were cooked deliciously, by the way. But imagine that. Kind of notice your reaction. Now imagine a plate that has barbecue chicken, roasted broccoli with a little bit of Parmesan cheese on top, and some whole grain bread with butter. Did you notice anything about, like, how you can open your eyes if you want, how you felt when you those different plates? You might have noticed you turned your nose up. You might have noticed kind of like, okay, it's fine, but not being as interested or engaged. And so color has a lot to do with our mood and with our enjoyment, which also has a lot to do with our mood. So kind of a nice little cycle there. And added fats, that's something else we can do. So which comes first, the mood or the food? Wow, they're connected. So it's not an either or. One feeds the other. And so imagine, for example, that you see the top there? I really don't like this top. Sorry. Okay, so imagine for a minute you intentionally or unintentionally skipped a meal. Maybe you got busy, but maybe you're also trying to, like, control your food a little bit more, trying to be healthier, and you just don't feel like eating, so you don't eat. So you skip a meal. You're not getting enough nutrition. Okay. So that now lowers your serotonin and your dopamine production, which in turn can cause a depressed mood, now starts to disturb our sleep. We're not eating enough, we're actually not going to sleep effectively. Our brain is rainbow wheeling. And then it begins to change our appetite. Now we have a decreased energy, decreased motivation, decreased hunger cues. We don't really know what we need, we don't really know what we want. We don't really feel like eating until our body and our brain are now wired to get food whenever we can. And at some point in time when we have access to food, we'll likely eat more in an attempt to just kind of to take care of ourselves, to make up for lost time. And some people think of it as binging and they're out of control. 99% of the time, they're rebound eating. They're responding to a restriction somewhere else along the line. Then there's guilt and shame that kicks in. And so, because they were bad, now they need to skip the next meal. So you can see when someone starts to try to over control their food and they actually start feeling worse. So, and along the lines, as all this is happening, our cortisol is going up and all kinds of other systems in our body are now registering danger. And it's very hard to be calm and not anxious when our body and our brain are sensing danger. Myth number 6, emotional eating is wrong or bad or not helpful. So emotional eating does get a really bad rap also. Happens for a lot of reasons, but we need food and we have emotions, and sometimes they are going to join up. So talk about it a little bit. Comfort food is, again, one of those things that gets labeled as a bad thing. It's really science. When we don't feel good, we want to feel better. And there are lots of ways that we may try to do that. Food is a pretty highly available thing. In our culture, our society, we typically do have a decent amount of options. It's accessible. Variety can vary for sure. But when we're needing comfort, we tend to aim more or drawn more toward high flavor, high reward options. We're wanting, something that's going to maybe pick our dopamine up and our serotonin. Again, we're not craving salad usually when we're seeking a comfort food. And so the amino acid tryptophan is usually something that is present with a lot of comfort food, and it crosses the blood-brain barrier easily, and it boosts our serotonin very, very quickly. Comfort foods also intertwined with memory and emotions and culture. So it may not be just the food itself, it may be the memory of grandma and, this really amazing summer vacation that actually gives you some comfort. And when we judge ourselves, then we miss the whole point. So enjoyable food brings us joy. So there's a reason enjoyment is a part of nutrition, and it's supposed to be a positive thing. Not all food has to have this amazing nutritional repertoire. So the goal with comfort food is not to eliminate it, but to understand it and then expand coping mechanisms. So ice cream is absolutely an option. And some days it may work. And if we are aware that, hey, I'm using ice cream because I'm sad, then we also can notice when it helped, when it did what we needed it to, or it's maybe not helping today, and we can do something else. But it's one option amongst a variety of different options. And it's really much more about not judging yourself. A couple of other quick little mood boosts. Dark chocolate, yeah, it's real. Berries, again, think of increased cognition. They're pretty. They function from a few different standpoints in boosting our moods. Fatty fish, bananas, oats, nuts and seeds. These are all really great for our brain. Side note, great little bedtime snack if you're hungry is oatmeal and maybe a little bit of peanut butter in it, and that actually it really helps sleep. It's just a little blurb on caffeine and what the deal is here. So caffeine blocks the uptake of a brain sedative that our brain naturally creates called adenosine. So a little bit of caffeine actually bumps up our dopamine. It makes us more alert. It bumps up our adrenaline. Too much can cause adrenal exhaustion and obviously dependency. There is some research though that shows that decaf has some potential boost as well. So if you don't do well with caffeine, you might notice a little bit of decaf actually is okay for you. So I alluded to this a little bit previously, but how we approach food really impacts how it affects us. And therefore will affect our mood. So if we give ourselves permission to eat, we're much more likely to be mindful. If we are eating it, but we really don't think we should be, we're actually going to be more tuned out, more likely to overeat and also not notice if it helped us. And then we're actually more anxious and we feel more guilt and more shame. So approaching food is really as important in my belief as the food we eat. So kind of a good overview. So it's sort of just some takeaways for you today. There's a lot in here, but if you can just remember these brief things, eating enough is really the first thing you can do to help your mood. So start with breakfast. And if you're not hungry for breakfast, it's probably because you're not eating breakfast. So my recommendation would be to start kind of putting a log on the fire, so to speak, in the morning. And once you start eating breakfast, your signals for hunger usually do turn on. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Eat at regular intervals, trying to develop a rhythm from day to day. So your body expects that you're going to feed it. And that meals have protein, carbs, color, and fat. They're not just protein or just protein and vegetables. Think of what you're adding in. Can you add in a probiotic? Can you try kefir if you've never had it? Can you make sure you're, adding a real salad dressing on your salad and not a fat-free salad dressing? Can you add one other color to your plate? And no matter what you do, this is something that even if you're not changing anything, can you be mindful? Can you be with the food that you're eating and taste it and notice if you like it? And as you're doing that, actually, the more mindful we are, the less we focus on food. It's interesting. So when we lean in, we're actually less obsessive. The more we're in our head and overthinking it, the more disconnected we are. So food should not only satisfy hunger, it should feed the soul, nourish the body, and deliver the system. So what I have. So if you, this is our, okay, Therapeutic Oasis is our website. Thought I'd finish putting that on there. And I do have a workshop I'm going to be doing later this spring too. So if you want any more information, you can take a picture of that and check it out. And anyone have questions? Robin.
Great. Thank you, Christy. Before we dive into Q&A, everyone, please take a moment to fill out the survey being posted in the chat box. We really appreciate your feedback. So just take 1 minute. I'll give you 1 minute to do that, and then we're going to take questions. Okay, let me just go ahead. Let's look in the chat. Oh. Okay, so there's the feedback. Okay. You know what? I'm thinking, Christy, stop sharing your screen maybe so that we have it. Perfect. Great. Okay. So any questions, write them in the chat box. If not, I have a question, but let's see. Come on, questions here, please. Okay, while you're doing your questions, I'm going to ask mine so we don't waste any time. Okay. What do you think of intermittent fasting?
So interesting. I'm like, I wonder if anyone's going to ask me about intermittent fasting today. So intermittent the actual research on intermittent fasting is primarily done on mice. There's really not good longitudinal research on humans at all. And for the most part, our body does rest. That's when we're sleeping. And typically intentionally stretching it longer than that when we're actually up and functioning, it even if biologically maybe we can get by, psychologically, our brain is still needing fuel on a regular basis, and we're using up fuel during the daytime. We're using fuel, it's gone every like 3 to 4 hours. So I am not a proponent of intermittent fasting. It really is, it does tend to set us up for rebound eating later in the day, and more often than not.
Right. So this idea of letting your metabolism rest and all that, you're saying that happens when we sleep, and it's not necessary to go 16, 18 hours, whatever.
Correct. And it's important to give it some space between meals. You know, if we are grazing all day long, that actually doesn't give our digestive system a chance to kind of go through its natural progression. It needs some cleansing waves that happen. So we do need to give some space between meals and snacks, at least a few hours, but it doesn't need like 18 hours of rest.
It doesn't. Okay. Interesting. And you said it right. You know, I don't really eat breakfast, and because I'm not hungry, you know, but I'm probably not hungry because I'm used to it. So.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else have a question for Christy? Come on, you must have a question, somebody. Well, Lizzie said, love this, Christy. So much good info packed into the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie.
Anybody else?
Wow, I guess I said everything.
Wow. It was very clear. It was not above anybody's head, that's for sure.
Oh, so what do I mean about not hyper focusing on food? Great question. So, when we think too hard about what I should be doing, I need to figure it out. I need to eat the right way. I need to find the way that's best for my body. It ends up disconnecting us from actually listening to our body. So in general, of 100% of our waking hours, our thoughts around food, I'm going to use the word should, take up around 10 to 20% of our brain power. And it's like, I'm hungry, what do I want? I'm satisfied, I'm going to Publix, that. When we start thinking of food a lot more than that, usually it's a sign that we're over controlling, that we're restricting somewhere. And the more disordered someone's eating is, the more they're thinking about food. And it's usually because they're overthinking it and then restricting somewhere.
Right. So is there I was going to say, is there a suggestion of how, I think we all kind of tend to think about it like, when am I going to, because food is so fun and food is so delicious. And, so sometimes we get like sort of where when our next meal is, it's like you eat lunch and then you're like, okay, what am I doing for dinner?
Well, so especially if we've not eaten enough early in the day, or we've eaten something that we think we should be eating, but it's actually not satisfying, then we will be thinking about that next meal. If we wake up in the morning and at breakfast we're thinking about dinner, it's usually a sign that either breakfast isn't satisfying or we haven't been eating enough overall.
So Sandra has a question. If a girl of, I guess that's 8.5, is having a lot of meltdowns, would there be a connection to food?
I mean, there could be. And the first thing, the main meltdowns that we often see with kids are usually in the afternoon. And a lot of times that's because they've been up for a long time. So if it's somebody who doesn't eat breakfast, or they eat breakfast and then they eat lunch at school at 10:30, and now you're picking them up at 3:00. They haven't eaten for a really long time and their blood sugar is gone. It's like they're down. So making sure that they're eating enough before they go to school, that they're, what time they're eating at school, and that they're eating. Are they having lunch, or are they too busy talking to their friends? And then making sure you actually have a really satisfying snack ready for them when you pick them up. That's often, again, usually we start with, hey, is there something that's being missed, or there's too long of a period of time?
So the next question is, how can we model this approach for kids? I think that answer probably is too long, but do you have a quick answer for that before we wrap?
It kind of related to what I just talked about. The first thing would really be making sure, first of all, that that you guys are all eating, that you're eating breakfast, that you're having food out for the family, that everyone eats. That's the first thing you can do to model that approach. That and that you're not calling food good or bad, that you're not labeling it as healthy or unhealthy. Just it's food. It's food. And there is ample food on the table at dinner. Kids get to serve themselves, because then they're regulating what they're needing, as opposed to, I'm eating the amount that mom told me I should eat, and now I'm going to think about food for the next couple hours until I can get something else. So that's a kind of quick, short answer to that. But
and they also just watch what we do, right? They so
yep. And they hear what we say, and they watch if we're looking in the mirror, and they're like, and they hear if we say, oh, I was bad today. So none of that's good.
All right, so we are just about out of time. I'd like to thank you all for being here, particularly Christy. We know that what we eat impacts both our brains and our body. Sometimes there's confusing messages that we hear about nutrition and the rules, what's good today is not good tomorrow, about how to eat. It seems like it's much harder than it needs to be. And I think, Christy, you really made it kind of simple. And we're grateful for your practical, evidence-based wisdom that supports our energy, our mood, our concentration, emotions, and overall well-being. We hope that you'll all make plans to join us next week. Same link, same date, same time, same back channel for our final installment in this year's series. Next Wednesday at noon, we will talk with Dr. Michelle from the Schmidt College of Medicine about one of my favorite topics, mindfulness, and the basics we can all use in our daily lives to make a meaningful difference. Until then, be well and enjoy the rest of your day, and go have some lunch.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. This was amazing.
Oh, good. This was really fun. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful for the time.
I appreciate everybody saying thank you in the chat. So that's wonderful. All right. Wonderful. All right. Thank you all. Have a great day, everybody.
Take care. Bye.